I'm an idiot for confusing Rob Paulson for Paul Rubens. That's seriously my bad there. But at any rate, time for the other request. Arthur has said to continue whatever webcomic I'd like, so I'm going to take this opportunity to continue looking at Twokinds. That way, come later in the year, we can spend a month looking at not only UberQuest, but 3 new webcomics instead of 2. For now, let's recap a bit. Last time on Twokinds, Trace made out with Flora. The gang is attacked by Natani and his brother Zen. The latter is wounded and warped away, while Natani reluctantly has to accompany the group for having his life spared. They meet a pervy slave owner named Eric, who agrees to let them on a boat with him for nude paintings, and Keith learns Natani's secret. And now, while hoping to reach the land where Trace and Flora could hopefully be in peace, we must visit the Basseton Islands as Keith wanted. What will happen when they get there? Let's find out. Due to the increase in length these chapters are getting, I'm going to have to pick up the pace big time. But anyway, Chapter 10 starts with Natani needing new clothes because of what happened with him earlier, and Keith warning Trace that while he's his friend, he may have to do something to him if ordered to, which he totally understands. Meanwhile, Flora notices she might have gained a little weight, not that I can really tell, and Keith succeeds in getting Natani's clothes done, and getting some tail. We learn that he joined his brother in the Brotherhood, which is around that point he really started taking his new gender role seriously, since the group doesn't allow women, it seems. But that bit of development is interrupted with everyone docked and heading onto land. So we get a short glimpse of Basseton life, about what I'd expect from beast folk who don't get the same treatment as the other beast folk have, but also some generals. I do like the armor the generic soldiers get, though it seems Nora is unimpressed, especially since Eric describes what these 3 are without actually knowing names. The third one, who we saw at the end of Chapter 9, is probably the most suspicious and most likely to be an antagonist later. Surprised to see me? I'm surprised too. I never thought I'd see your face back here after all these years, but now you're back, so welcome home, brother! Oh snap, is he really his brother? No, not that way it seems. General Alabaster here says it's because he's an outcast that he isn't their brother, and he critiques his lack of footwear? What would you even wear? Creatures who walk exactly like other beast folk? Anyway, Keith explains that he was told that he could come back on the condition he brought Trace here, which Alabaster admits was supposed to be impossible, meaning they expected him to just die with dignity. But since he did what he was told, they gotta accept him back. Mike and Evels rejoice over the fact that Keith won't be with them anymore, since they're still spooked by his black magic. But then Nora pulls an Ivankov and turns Mike into a woman. Whoa, Mike. You look hot. You better keep that sentiment after they turn back. So it turns out that Basseton women mate only once per year, at the same time, which can only mean one thing. Mass orgy party! Woo! Also, only the women can live inside the city while the men live outside it. That's weird, but anyway, they are to stay in the tavern and not leave the district, while Keith is to have a trial later to determine his fate. Also, Cirrus is now in the form of a Basseton. Dude really gets around. I find this bit funny though. Keith, why do I have to wear these silly things? Sorry, Flora. Ankles, the base of the tail, and between the legs are what we consider nudity here. A beast race that appears to human decency? What's it matter? You don't have anything to show. Trace and Flora go see a butcher while Keith takes Natani with him somewhere, while we abruptly have a Trace flashback of his old self discussing an action against their own king? Well, at least we get to see Euchre as a human? Oh, and there's Blind Girl again. So they were planning against the Basseton too? I mean, Trace is saying that he has someone over there to make sure they don't do anything against them. Is he planning to subjugate their race too? Geez, I know your wife dying was bad, but don't drag other races into this. Keith has to fight a guard so he can pass, and it's here we get introduced to Madeline, who will actually be relevant later. Otherwise, Keith manages to defeat the guard using some skills he learned from watching Natani. And it seems the compliments make him happy, given the tail wags. And now, where are we? Oh, apparently this is the kingdom that lost their king. Apparently the wolves are attacking multiple villages and killing everyone they could find. I'd say this is irrelevant, but this does relate to something later in this video. Otherwise, Mike begs Evels to hide him from Eric, but he's too busy being Sanji to care at first. Only if he shows him naked later, he'll hide him. Keith reveals he was heading to a graveyard to see the graves of his parents, his father being an arms general named Cornelius. But he only really cares for his mother, since Dad was apparently a bad person for abusing his mother. What did he do? My father had killed her, beaten her to death. If he hadn't been so intoxicated, he may have killed me as well. Damn, your life is just full of mishaps. His father apparently fell on his spear, and that's why he got framed. And now we have Mike looking at his new body. They feel real. What if I'm stuck like this for the rest of my life? Ethels was right. I do look good. Ah, I'm attracted to my own reflection.
Hey, I can look at myself naked.
Anyway, Keith meets with another character we'll be seeing quite a bit later on, Lynn, telling him about a girl who wanted to see him. Also, General Alaric wants him to join him in the baths. Male bonding session, perhaps? Alaric learns about what Keith was doing the time he was gone, while Keith hopes to learn more about the girl he was told about. Turns out it's Laura, and she was living in the non-Basseton district this whole time. In any case, Alaric shows how good a friend he was, and it shows that despite what might have happened with him, he seems trustworthy. Maybe. Meanwhile, Flora gives Trace a flower she found, but only after telling him that if he were to accept, they'd be a couple. But at this point they are, so he gladly takes it. Some mild interactions between characters later. We have Keith arriving at where Alaric wanted to show him. And it's something so secret, he mustn't say anything about it to no one. It's a Templar tower. What could this mean? Well, it seems to involve a mission he's giving Keith, as on top of the trial, he has to do this one thing if he ever hopes to be accepted into society again. Elsewhere, Trace talks to Nora, who is teasing him about his true self, and Trace demands she tells him who he really was. So now we learn about his childhood, and it amounts to him being a smart child who got bored and wanted adventure. He fell in love, getting on the Grand Templar's bad side, and getting married to Saria in due time. But of course, we get the part where Saria dies due to a thief's poison arrow, which caused him to go insane. He had attempted to use dark magic to revive her, but that left most of his mind destroyed essentially, which caused him to overthrow the old Grand Templar, kill the other masters, and create his own inner circle. A complete and utter takeover from a normal mage guild to a military-based one. Well, that sucks. To think he was somewhat decent before magic screwed him over, and more Mike and Evel shenanigans. Of course, way to ruin the moment. Moving on, while Natani makes himself a mana necklace, they get visited by Laura, who is looking for Keith. He, of course, is learning what mission he has, which is to bring Trace over to them to give to the Templar, while dealing with the one they consider a spy, Natani. This is followed up with him saying he's got time to think about it, before showing him a statue of Keith, naked. I'm guessing either Alaric is really friendly with him, or he's meant to be gay. Well, now Keith is stripped naked to help make the statue. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, this is it. Keith should be behind this door. Oh boy. Keith, you probably don't remember me, but Just in time! The art quality has improved again, getting closer to the current style. So while that goes on, Trace and Flora talk about their plans for the future, while Natani talks with Zen, which leads to him overhearing Laura talking with Keith. Okay, so since Illusion Laura was just Keith wanting to hear what he hoped was the case for their separation, this is what really happened. Laura got overwhelmed and worried because her family and the village were afraid of Keith, and she got pressured by them to the point where she ran away. So nothing about her getting drunk or her sleeping with someone, unless some asshole told Keith a lie, but this certainly gets him mad. I mean, she went missing. He tried to look for her, and he got told she didn't want to see him again. So, yeah, that would be reasonable. But he soon sees the fault in his approach and he calms her down. Looks like he's starting to make amends, but how long will this last? He offers her a place at the inn, which might not be the best idea because Eric's women's senses are tingling. Why, hello there, my dear. A pleasure to meet you.
What an ass!
Laura recognizes Trace, though. I'm not sure how, or if she was there when he slaughtered an entire village and kidnapped children. Evil Trace is a monster. While moving right along, it seems Natani is starting to show jealousy, as even though he wants Keith to be happy, he's like, you have nothing in common. But it gives him a chance to meet Laura and how nice she is compared to him. While this is going on, Kat gives Flora a full body massage. Ignoring the obvious fan service, she does notice that Flora might be getting fat. Or that she's actually, you're getting pudgy, Flora. You're a tubby tiger. Sure, since she accidentally came down in public naked, which breaks laws, Trace tries to step in to keep her from being detained. It gets so bad that he ends up declaring, in their language, that she is his mate. And in their case, she has diplomatic immunity. Well, that solves that problem. For a moment. As he tells her he told Eric he'd have her model for him once a week so he could sail them to their next destination. This gets her mad because she was a slave before and he's making decisions for her. So, Baka Trace! He goes downstairs where some guards say he's been summoned, only to knock him out with him hearing about what's going on with the Templars, ending the chapter. Well, that took a lot more time than I hoped. Let's see if I can pick up the pace a bit even more. Chapter 11. Looks like it'll be a major one, but will it have more stakes than Chapter 6? Keith and Natani are having an off relation since, again, his wife-to-be is back and this might affect their relationship. Zen, of course, is just teasing him despite what happened. I guess this means he knows everything that happens during this time and is cool with them hooking up. But anyway, we learn the reason they have a mental link, and more so why he believes to be male, is due to an old wolf who they tried to assassinate once. He used forbidden magic that damaged Natani's soul. To fix this, a ritual was done to meld their souls together, thus sharing a connection. Since some aspects were lost, he ended up copying his gender. Okay, so that's what they meant by the magic changing him. Doesn't really change him keeping this as part of him even after what happens later on in the story. But yeah, it's still a pretty slippery method of storytelling, and my point still stands, it's not very well done. Till Keith anyway, no one important knows about this, and he doesn't want anyone to know. He seems to trust Keith with it, though little does he know, Keith is pelted with thoughts of having to complete his mission. To make matters worse, he overhears guards talking about what they're doing in regards to the tower, only for him to be found by Alabaster. Now he only has 1 hour to complete his task because the trial got moved to tonight. Things are really starting to... Oh, god damn it, Mike and Evels! Get your own chapter! We got more important issues to deal with. Like Keith trying to decide whether or not to go through with killing his friend, while Natani ponders about revealing his true feelings. Well, of course he snaps and tries to attack him, and now he too is naked. This is your fault. All my life, all I've ever wanted was to come home. I wanted to be with my people, my friends. They came so close, but now I'm gonna lose it all. Because of you! Dude, you had no way of controlling this. Blame the bastards who decided to use you like this. Go kick their ass and save your friend from whatever the hell they're doing. He decides to commit suicide, but Natani stops him. He forces him to tell him why he was doing this. However, Alabaster, seeing there was no signal, even when there are innocents inside. Also, that's a pretty strong cane to bust through armor like that. Meanwhile, we learn how the magic towers work. They are basically batteries that grant mana to Templars who draw from it. And right now, there's a platform that traces on that siphons mana from him and goes directly to the tower, making him unable to use magic. Seems like a decent idea for a fantasy device, but at any rate, before Natani can confess his feelings, they learn the tavern is on fire and the doors are locked. Good thing Cirrus gave them the master key, because of course he would. And then they kiss. That means they're engaged. No, it doesn't. The Templars are planning to leave and believe Trace is in good hands. No, he's not. His hand is starting to turn black, meaning he's becoming a divergence catalyst. And no one got that but me. They get out thanks to Natani's teleportation spell, and Keith reveals what they're doing to Trace. Hearing about the tower, Eric remembers meeting one of the Master Templar's Basseton slaves, who was part of a failed experiment to give magic to them, as it actually dumbs them down. In short, it seems the Templars were planning to lobotomize the Basseton, which would likely mean a possible means to enslave them the same way as with the Cadron. And now the Templars have become full-on demon card. They're hell-bent on taking over everything! Damn you, evil Trace! Is there nothing you won't stop at? It would explain why Alabaster was so nuts earlier, but I guess there's more to him as we find out later. But whatever, since the tower is incomplete, that means it's open to attack as the core is currently exposed. Shattering it would mean destroying the tower, so one group can go get Trace while Natani attacks the core. There's actually a lot of planning involved, not too silly sounding, and is on point. Unlike that battle with Neutral, there's actual build-up to something. And there's actual stakes involved. Holy crap, this chapter really is an improvement over chapter 6. All the while, Laura is surprised that Eric, a human, is doing all this despite her perception of humans earlier. Eric actually sounds cool for once, because no Basseton means no Basseton women. And I can't let that happen. Ugh, you really are bastard Sanji. But it seems they were expected. As Ulrich confronts Keith on the bridge, Alabaster runs into Eric and Laura, and Natani and Flora run into the other general, which Natani refers to as Musclehead General. Oh, and yet another Mike and Neville's moment. This time naked male Mike meeting naked Foxwoman, and when they kiss, it's actually Neville. And he's back to normal. I'm starting to see why people think Tom might not be that good if he's making these kind of jokes. Anyway, the reason this guy is a musclehead is because he's like Alex Armstrong.
See this body, flawlessly sculpted in service of our state. Feel how they pulse with loyalty, how solid and serious they are. Feel how, if you don't believe me, they will make you believe.
So even after Keith tells Ulrich about the Templars' plan, he still insists that he isn't broken like the others and wants to uphold the law still. So he's not really so much a villain as much as he is an idiot for needing to follow through with the law. With that, the two fight with swords, Natani fights with his hands, and Eric fights with knowledge. Okay, that's pretty funny that he's having a nerd-off with an old guy. Apparently his middle name, Adrian, is either foreshadowing something, or just shocking to Eric that this guy knows so much. Back at the tower, the architect and some students start noticing the mana turning black, while Natani and Flora are defeated with ease and get jailed. Yet, even though blades were useless, he was no match for whatever spell Cirrus used on him. Otherwise, the only reason Eric wins his battle is because Kat shows up to encourage him, and her breasts, which get him thinking. Maybe he does see her as like a girlfriend. Who knows at this point? His question is when Cajun are capable of having children. That's all. It's just a tease of what Trace and Flora's relationship will be, because all it amounts to is lots of sex. Keith seemingly loses, but he ended up on the other side of the damaged bridge, meaning that Ulrich will lose him and the plan can continue as normal. But Keith tries to save him from the fall, for even though he's still not on his side, he doesn't want to lose the friendship he had over the years. Ulrich realizes that maybe their laws were wrong, and everything he did was for him. And despite their best efforts, Keith's sleeve rips, and he takes the plunge. So, after waking up to the corpse of Musclehead, they run into Madeline, who apparently has a crush on Keith and wants Natani to give him a note. As awkward as this is, it's nowhere near as bad as random chair in a battlefield. Poor Keith. Badly wounded physically and emotionally. Everyone he loved is dead because of him, even though really, it's not his fault. Anyway, they try to go for the tower but get surrounded, and soon meet the king, or rather queen, still a king, Adelaide. Eric tries to convince her that the tower is impairing everyone, and while she doesn't fully believe it at first, she's willing to have them detained for questioning. Alabaster loses his mind over this and zaps them, but because Flora is once again hurt, this causes Trace to sense it and snap. He kills his captors, believes Adelaide was hurting them, and starts impaling people with black tendrils. Natani says the tower is giving him mana and can shut it down with a good shot, so he's granted permission to blast the core. Time to infuse an arrow with magic and blow this joint! Stay back! This tower is mine! I won't let you sabotage all that I have worked for! Will someone please put this old man to bed? He's getting cranky again! Laura reveals her locket has mana in it and tells Natani to use it, even though it seems to be important to her. She also distracts Alabaster long enough for him to zap her, but even when evil, Trace uses his magic to block it. Seems there's still good in him after all. Laura seizes Alabaster so he doesn't do anything else, but since they're too close to the tower, they won't make it out of the blast radius. But they have no choice. Natani takes the shot and succeeds. Laura's life flashes before her as she is engulfed in the explosion. The chapter winds down with Ulrich remembering the day that Keith was banished and how Alabaster scarred him because of how he talked down about his father, and how he wasn't able to stand up to him that day. But he did do one last thing to hopefully change the odds in Keith's favor. Well, that was quite a chapter. Certainly had a lot going on, but I think there was some good to it. How will this be followed up? Let's find out with the last chapter for the episode. Chapter 12 starts with Group B. Being bored, it seems. Hey, look! It's Tom, the Cameo Man! Hooray! Wolves are attacking the village! They're trying to kill everyone! Hooray! Oh no! Seath might have just killed Tom! Hooray! Karen is so oblivious to what is going on. It's sad. Oh, and Seath now looks more like he does now. That's good. It suits him best. Since he shared pizza with them, he tells them they should just run away since everyone in his group will just kill them. We check on DBE, who I'm just gonna call Red for now on because even the transcripts call him that, who finds one of Rain's shackles, and it turns out that by uncoupling them, it undoes the magic seal on her, turning her into a Cadron? But how could this be? Well, despite his best efforts to get them out, Seath gets found out about his act of mercy, made worse by Karen hugging him and saying he's her father. Karen, you are a fool. And I guess this means Seath can't work with whoever he was with before because now he's wanted too. Rain accidentally triggers a teleportation spell, so they're safe. If only because, again, her mother was the Grand Templar. How this explains her Cajun form is uncertain, even though, yes, Trace did turn her into one before. Also, they warped 10 meters away, so they have to run. Zen gets the news on Seath's betrayal, so he has a new target. but since he's someone's nephew, he can capture him alive, if possible. Natani and the others wake up in the infirmary, where we learn that the nurses wear masks to prevent temptation. I guess you can think of it as blind care, so they'll take care of anyone, but that doesn't stop them from learning about his breasts. Since the king and her generals are missing, there's chaos growing and no one knows what will happen. We check on Flora, who isn't being allowed to see Trace because of their laws. But it's here we learn something important. But I need to make sure you and the little one are all healthy first. Mew? Little one? Who is that? Well, your baby, of course.
Dun, dun, dun.
Gee, it's almost as if that sexy time from a while back had an adverse effect. And yes, this is what Neutral meant by letting a certain race return. We're getting halflings! Someday. As soon as it becomes relevant in the current plot. After Zen teases Natani again, Keith shows up and informs him of where they are. He also says he has no intention of running away. Now that even Laura is gone, he has to face any punishment that may come. That is until Lynn shows up with a parchment from the late Ulrich, saying that Keith is now a citizen again. Guess he planned ahead. With or without his little turn to good. It turns out Trace is currently with Nora, who tells him about the black magic engulfing his hand. Since they're likely to blame him for what happened earlier, she had to take him away anyway. But because the tower took away magic from the land, she too is drained and has to rest for a long time. He's also without power, but wishes to see Flora anyway. Even without magic, his friends need him. So it's trial time, and we learn the son of Alabaster is one of the people running the trial. And it's here we learn that Keith's mother wasn't actually a legal citizen, that his father brought her in anyway, and it turns out Cornelius wasn't actually the bad guy after all. Alabaster wanted to turn her over, so he tried getting her, got cut, murdered her, and then framed Keith for it after witnessing him killing Cornelius. So that last part still happened, but otherwise Alabaster was the one responsible for his mother's death. Meanwhile, Flora and Kat are put into the ship with Mike and Evels, saying they had nothing to do with what happened and could go free. Though that might be contradicted in a bit. Flora wants to find Trace, so she and Kat force the two to help them out. They still refuse because of the chance of freedom from slavery, and even she relates to them. But she states she is a free Cadron, is with Trace for her own reasons, and that their relationship is real. Evels agrees to help, but on the condition they get Trace to buy them their freedom. Speaking of Trace, he couldn't get down the mountain, so he hangs with Nora a bit longer while learning another way out. Now for Keith's sentencing. He's to be banished again, and his companions to die. Not wanting to let it stand, he draws a weapon to tell them that the law isn't a religious doctrine, that it's there to help govern themselves. But because of how it was run, they've been twisted, causing people he cared for to die for it. Luckily for them, King Adelaide is back, and with Lynn has yet another parchment from Ulrich. Turns out this illness she had was actually from the tower. Meaning what Keith said was true. The humans were screwing with them, but that doesn't change the judgment, unless it turns out Ulrich's act of promoting Keith gave him enough of a rank boost to get him past this, because he defeated him in combat.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Oh, and the note Madeline wrote was actually a testimony saying she saw the duel, making everything legit. So in short, Keith is getting the role of ambassador, who is going to represent their people because they shouldn't remain isolated anymore. So yes, all this time Ulrich sought revenge on his own government and planned this all out. He just Kikakudori'd everyone. And now to wrap up the chapter. Trace notices that Nora also picked up Laura's body, or rather he did while he was still under the influence. It seems she might be past saving, but Lord knows he'll try, even if it means using dark magic. She does wake up and tells him about how she first met him. Turns out humans have Cadron capture other Cadron to give to them as slaves, And even then, they too tend to have slaves of their own. Well, that sucks, dear. And Rambleflora is ready for battle. But too bad they're already free to go, so battle averted. Keith learns about Trace and Laura, Adelaide learns what Natani actually is, and Laura laments not living life to the fullest or whatever. But at least she can die in the arms of the one she loved most. So, I think I found where the story improves. The pacing now seems more concrete, in that it allows some decent build-up and payoff in regards to the kind of plot we got. In which case, Templar were planning to overthrow the Basseton Islands, got stopped when our heroes found out, and it led to Keith regaining his home, but losing his love in the process. There are some questionable moments about the whole breaking the system, so Keith gets his ambassadorship status, but I can't say I saw it coming. I really thought Alaric was going to be a straight-up bad guy, but nope. He actually did have some layers. I didn't care much for the Mike and Evel subplot, as it didn't really matter to the other thing about buying their freedom, and just felt like a poor gag involving a sex change. Other than that, though, the other plot stuff with Flora's pregnancy and Natani and his feelings for Keith, that's alright. I definitely think the writing has improved over earlier chapters, just not everything was that good. There's still cuts to other events that disrupt story flow, but other than that, the focus is more noticeable. Lastly, the art style goes through more upgrades and is now closer than ever to being like the current style, which is very refined and distinct, but open for more improvement. Maybe the next time we go over this, it'll be the last, because we're getting closer to current events, but who knows. My final thoughts will come in due time, but for now I'll say, much better impression this time. Just don't let me see Mike and Evels as much anymore, unless you're planning to do something meaningful. Decent chapters all around, so there's that. Next time we get our video game review chosen by the Patreon voters. What will it be on? Tune in next time to find out. Because no Basseton means no Basseton women. And I can't let that happen.
He just wants to peek at naked girls. He's a complete pervert!